positioning the region. We're going to hear from Grace Burnett. She's the CEO of Grace Kennedy Financial Group, somebody I know quite well. She has held that position since 2016, and she is the first female to be appointed to this position. In April 2019, Grace's portfolio, notice her name matches her company, was further expanded when she was appointed Grace Kennedy Money Services Group of Companies head. So she is the largest, she's in charge of the largest contributor to Grace Kennedy's profits. That's why she has the name Grace. She sits on several boards, a lot of charity boards. We sat together on one. So she's an amazing person. And she is appointed in most instances to address concerns in subsidiaries. So when there's a problem, Grace sends Grace. And she's considered a fixer, accessible, people-focused, with an enviable reputation for developing internal talent. Several people, she's just proud to say a lot of her proteges are leading the GK businesses globally. So Grace, over to you.
Thank you so much, Alison. All right, I know it's really difficult to be presenting after lunch, Friday afternoon, when most of us would prefer to go hang out with friends and have a drink. So I'm going to try and make this, as light as I possibly can. We started with what was the cover of our 2019 annual report, because we thought the theme was really appropriate to the topic, the spirit of Jamaica inspiring the world. And you'll see on that some of our ambassadors, and many are international figures. We all know Shelley and Fraser Price, who are particularly proud of the fact that she, had her child and has reclaimed the position of the world's fastest woman alive. And you see as well Alia. So I'm really just going to go straight into our presentation and to share with you a little bit about the Grace Kennedy journey. We always start with Marcus Garvey because, one of the things he said, which we always quote, is that people without knowledge of their past history, origin, and culture is like a tree without roots. So we pay a lot of attention to where we're coming from. So from humble beginnings in 1922, and we still own that building to the extreme left. We're now going to repurpose it to house, the children of our employees, and to the 1997 building, which now houses the food business in Jamaica, and 2019, our corporate headquarters, which we launched. We also are well represented internationally. So you'll find Grace Foods Canada, top left, Grace Foods UK in Welling Gardens, top right, and one of our food trucks, a very important part of our positioning. Bottom right, you'll see our facility in New Jersey, and you see the Grace and LaFay brands. And I say brands because I want to come back to that. And you'll see on the left some of our locations in Jamaica. And I highlight the smallest one in the middle because it just shows to us that every single element of the business is important. So that business in the middle really represents a partnership we have introduced with the farmers in the south end of Jamaica, an area called Hounslow, where we have engaged in contract farming. And many years ago, we actually imported pepper mash for some of our products. And now we are exporting pepper mash to several countries across the region. And that for us is how you invest in your communities. Because, one of those farmers called once to say that, Grace Kennedy has actually changed his life because he can actually approach the bank with the contract, because we give forward contracts to all of these farmers, and borrow money to send his daughter to university. We started in 1922. I'm showing you the founding fathers. You see Mr. Fred Kennedy and Dr. John Grace, so that's where the name came from. And James Solomon Sr., who joined the team very quickly, but regrettably the name was not incorporated. But the Solomons and the Kennedys remain an active part of Grace Kennedy, and you'll see the document saying we started as importers and exporters. And again, you're seeing our original building. This slide really shows you our growth 1950 to 1980. And what's important about this for me is that you'll notice in 1952, we had a location in Montreal. A lot of people don't know that. And so you're seeing that a lot of how we have grown has been to respond to the needs of the business. So there was a lot of active trade between Canada, Kingston, and the region. You heard about ackee and saltfish? So that's where the saltfish came from that region. And so you'd have seen us as a business grow to respond to the needs of our customers or the needs of the business itself. And this global growth continued 1980 to 2000. I'm showing you some of what happened. In that period, we expanded to Barbados, Belize, Bermuda, Canada, a new part of Canada in a different way. This is when we moved into Ontario, Guyana, Jamaica, Trinidad and Tobago, Turks and Caicos, UK, USA, to name a few. But what's important for me on this particular slide, you see the Gleaner insert, which is Jamaica's, I don't want to put a plug here for the Gleaner, but a very popular newspaper in Jamaica, where we launched our foundation when we celebrated our 60th anniversary as a business. And what this means for us is that, as we've grown the business, we've always been conscious of the need and the responsibility to really and truly take over our communities. So that foundation is where we would fund some chairs at the University of the West Indies. We fund several scholarships. We do a lot of our environmental work. And then you see below that, bottom left, Grace Kennedy and Staff Community Development Foundation. This was formed in 1979. What is unique about this particular foundation is truly a partnership between the company and the staff. Staff are encouraged to contribute, and it is matched 2-to-1 by the company. And all of those funds are used to run homework centers. We send close to 800 Jamaican students to school from primary through to tertiary. And so every move we have made as a business, we've always been conscious of our responsibility to our communities. But as we have moved on and strengthened our presence 2000 onwards, you're now seeing one of our food trucks in New Jersey with the Grace Patty, which is one of our products that's doing amazingly well right now. Below, you'll see Walmart. We are particularly proud of that relationship. In fact, in Canada, we are the representative, the partner for the group, for the segment, the Caribbean segment for Walmart. And as we've done that, we've also added ambassadors that reflect the fact that there are many generations of Caribbean people that support us. And so you'll see top center Brianna Williams. But as we've expanded overseas, we have not stopped expanding in Jamaica. And you see bottom right, one of our acquisitions in 2020, Key Insurance Company Limited. So some of our major brands today, some you may recognize, some you won't. I pick on Funny Bones. That's actually a food service provider in the UK. Enco produces sauces in the UK, and they're competing with the tops. Cheddar Oriental is one of our companies, actually the largest producers of fortune cookies in the UK. But if you come bottom left, you see Signia Globe. That's a partnership we have with Cave Shepherd and with Massey in Barbados. Canopy, a recent partnership with Musson. What this says is that we are willing to partner, and we have partnered with many like-minded companies as we have gone about growing our business, and that we're often responding to what we see as changing consumer needs as we expand. So Lafay was a major investment in the Latino market. But I step back a little bit to some of the structure that you may want me to share. When in 1995, the team then led by Douglas Orain sat down and developed a 2020 vision scorecard. And I think there's a play on 2020. But what you're saying is that you're planning 25 years ahead, which is not the norm, I would dare to say, for Caribbean companies. I want to pick on about 4 of the things that they said would have to be true of the 8 things they chose. Number 2, being ethical in our conduct of doing business. Number 3, being responsible members of our community. Grace, we care. I pick on number 8, continuously increasing productivity so that we can increase and raise the standard of living of our staff. And also, if you look at 7, a company whose consumers demand our products, our services, and our brands. So they would have sat down and said, these 8 things must be true for us to achieve our 2020 vision for this group. Once you've done that, you now have to articulate your vision and your mission. And the first part of our vision has really not changed. It's to be a global consumer group delivering long-term consumer and shareholder value. But how we are doing it has been modified over the years. So it now says, through brand building and innovative solutions in food and financial services, and always for us provided by highly skilled and motivated people. And if you look at our mission, it's really how we deliver the taste and experience of Jamaican and other multicultural foods. So that incorporates the other foods that we now carry, and leading financial services to our region. So our financial services business is focused around the region. Our foods business is international. But everything we do is always guided by our core values. And I've listed some of them there. Honesty, integrity, trust, we call it HIT. And we have gone further to say what integrity means. Our word is our bond. We don't even need to sign the contract. If we tell you we're going to do it, we're going to do it. Respect for staff, peers, managers, directors, critical to us. Don will often share a story about being given an assignment by Douglas Orain around how he could really and truly reduce expenses in the business. And he was sitting there puzzled, and the office attendant approached him and said, what's the problem? And he explained, and she started to give him a list of things that he could take on. And so we have this philosophy that every person has a contribution to make, and every person must be respected and must be listened to. And in addition, humility for us without pretension or self-importance. So now as accountants, you're wondering, all right, so what's the numbers around being a global consumer group? So we have specified that 60% of our revenue must be earned outside of Jamaica, and 50% of our profit must be derived outside of Jamaica. And that to do this, we're going to leverage our relationships with multinationals and form partnerships to enhance our offerings. And you'll see some of our partners below. Nestle is a very recent partner, Western Union over 30 years. We represent them in 11 countries, P&G a few years old. And Fonterra, to your right, which a lot of people may not know about, that's our partner for a business called Dairy Industries that produces that cheese that Jamaicans and everybody loves. But they've been partnering with us since 1964. And so that is how we have grown the business. How are we doing against this? So you'll see in 2020, 47% of our revenue is earned outside of Jamaica. The target is 60, so possibly we need to do better with that. And 45% of our profits is earned outside Jamaica. Target is 50%, so we're closer to the goal. But what's important to note, because you could grow your revenues outside Jamaica if your revenues inside Jamaica are flat. So we have to be very conscious of that. So what I want to show you is how the revenue of the business is distributed. So you'll see in 2010, the revenue was 55 million at the top. It's now 111 million. But what we're speaking to is, and that figure should be USD, sorry, not Jamaican. 68% of our revenue was in Jamaica in 2010, and 10 years later, 53%. And what we're particularly proud of is for North America, it was 7%, and it now constitutes 20%. That would have come from deliberate investments, like in 2014 when we bought the company Lafay. You'll see some shrinkage on Europe and UK. That's because of a shift in strategy that we're now executing. We expect that the growth there will pick up very shortly. As we go forward, we're moving with 4 strategic drivers. So you see our mission, our vision, our strategy, and our focus areas. And what we're focused on is sustainable growth and innovation as a pillar, customer centricity as a specific pillar, optimized internal processes, and a performance-driven organization. That's where we have all our initiatives around, how we're going to prepare our staff, how we're going to add skills, how we're going to prepare the team to do what they need to do for us. And I really want to just break at this point to show you how the company has transitioned, because we now are no longer an English-speaking company. We're going to share with you one of our ads that's out there now with one of our newest products, the patty.
Okay, so what you're going to do, you're going to go to stage right. You're going to circle around and you're going to stand in the center, and then you're going to come back for the finale. Thank you. Come on. Oh.
It's a Rococo Caribbean style this. I love.
Yeah, man. Este es el verdadero sabor caribeño. Vegetarianas, mild beef, spicy beef o curry chicken. Encuéntralas en el congelador de tu supermercado.
That just shows you how we have transitioned as a company and how you'll find us all over. And, I'd shared at the start, and I will talk about it again. A big part of our success, we believe, is that we've been very conscious about giving back. And I'm going to just share with you some of what we've done as we've navigated COVID. In addition to telling our staff that they didn't need to worry about their jobs, they need to focus on how we as a group could navigate. So that made everybody just focus on growing the company. I think that explains the results we've seen. You can see there on frame some of what we did in Jamaica. Top to the right, you're seeing the tablets. We spent quite a bit on tablets for students. We were also running our food truck in Jamaica, feeding frontline workers. You can see a pictorial there. And we also did a lot with our campuses because we found that our students were actually struggling. And we run food banks at the University of the West Indies and UTech, and we are expanding that program as we speak. And then for Canada, you'll see where we actually supported the frontline workers, over 1,900 cases of Grace coconut water. We just donated that to first responders and frontline healthcare workers. And in the USA, displaced hospitality workers were given meals and products by our team. So a food truck would actually drive around and provide lunches for people. And in Belize, closer home, you can see where we would have supported the Mental Health Association of Belize and the Belamo Police Department and citizens. I could show you pictures of Bahamas and Guyana and Trinidad because it's just a part of who we are. But to take it to the UK, where we supported the Brixton Soup Kitchen and NHS at Excel. But in addition to that, we work very closely with the diaspora because we know actually that's the root of our success. We have followed our diaspora as they've migrated all over. You can find our products in Germany, Russia, and Japan. And all of those places, I think we have to owe to our diaspora. But I'm showing you on the top left that, we've been a legacy partner of the Jamaica Diaspora Conference. And you're seeing there our CEO and Minister Kamina Johnson-Smith. But on the right, a program we're intensely proud of is our Birthright program. And for the past 17 years, we've provided opportunities for second and third generation Jamaican university students living in the US, UK, and Canada. So every year we select two from the US now, one from the UK, one from Canada. They come in, they work in the business, but every weekend we immerse them in the culture of the country because we know that they become advocates for the country and also advocates for the brand. In fact, we're proud to say one of our Birthright candidates is now a mayor in the UK. As we approach our 100th anniversary next year, on the 14th of February, we will be 100 years old. That's actually an achievement for a Caribbean company. We don't think the 14th of February was actually a mistake. We believe that we're a company of love, and maybe that's why we chose red. And that's why we care so much about our communities. And as we do that, we have decided that there are a couple of things we must continue to do if we're going to continue to grow as we solidify our position as a global consumer group. And one of those, the first one there is mergers and acquisitions. This is something we have done throughout the life of the company, but we also know it's something we have to continue to do as we try to acquire entities strategically. Innovation, Grace brands growth. I think one of the things that may be a takeaway for you today is that there's not just a Grace brand, but there are several Grace brands. I didn't even mention Dunn's River that some of you may see in the UK. It's also a Grace brand. So how do we continue to innovate? There are categories that people are very focused on: convenience, better for you. How do we grow in those segments that we can continue to serve our customers? Financial inclusion. I am from the Financial Services Division, and we serve over 1 million Caribbean residents every year, almost 1 million in Jamaica and several hundred in the other countries. How do we start to help our customers to improve their lives? We settled on a conviction last year that says that, aspirations, big or small, are meant to be pursued. And when we did that, we created a purpose around the fact that we exist to open the doors to greater possibilities. So we're actually going to be rolling out financial literacy programs as we help our customers to better their lives. Digital transformation is something we've also embraced. Last year, we brought in McKinsey and we developed a digital roadmap, not just for the financial services, but for the entire business. We actually established in the middle of COVID a digital factory, staffed it, have some teams working on products. And this is something we see as critical as we continue to grow the business, not just for efficiency, but also very importantly for the customer experience, internally, our staff, and externally, our customers. And then one of the things which has become a new area of focus for us, and especially for our overseas business, and I would single out UK here, is really to develop an ESG framework, our environmental, our social, corporate governance framework that our partners can see the work we're doing, the work we're doing around our communities, can see how we're focused on climate change, can see how we're focused on sustainability. So those are some of the things that, as a group, we're focused on now as we move to the next 100 years. And for me, is really a cover of the Grace Kennedy story. I'm now available to take any questions.
Hi, there is a question, and I mean, not just to plug, I'm blunt, but when I started my business, the first bank to grab me was First Global, and it wasn't because I tormented you for my financial literacy project, I will admit, and to also admit that when I lived in Canada as a Canadian Jamaican, your porridge kept me alive, and the rice and peas, I still cannot cook the rice and peas like the way it came prepackaged. So I must give a plug as somebody who used to be part of the diaspora. So, for a Jamaican, and worse your name, Grace, you're just Grace Kennedy. I'm sorry, Grace. So the question today is...
I wish so much. My daughter now lives in Canada, and I can tell you she's very dependent on that rice and peas.
I am telling you, it's the best. Anyhow, I cannot cook. So any advice for Caribbean companies looking to go global? You represent a brand that's not just Jamaican, it's a Caribbean success story. So if somebody wants to start, because as you said, on February 14th, there was, a Grace, there was a Moss Solomon, and there was a Kennedy. What do you think are the tools, or what do you think people need to do to go global?
I think you have to be very clear about what you're trying to accomplish. So which is why I spoke to the work that Douglas Arena and team would have done in 1995. If you're going to be deliberate about it, you need a plan around it. You also have to communicate the plan. Everybody needs to know the direction that the bus is going in. So every January, for example, we bring together the top 400 employees, senior employees across the group, and we share and discuss and distill and the strategy going forward. You also have to invest in your system. So I did not spend time discussing some of the hygiene matters that you have to get right around compliance and your enterprise risk management and your various lines of defense around audit and risk. I mean, we do not do any sort of planning around doing a full risk assessment of your market. So you have to know where you're going. You have to understand the risk of the markets you're entering. What are the things you must look out for and how you're going to navigate them. You also have to invest sometimes in really good legal advice. So we have our attorneys in various markets guiding us. But you also have to be clear that what you're presenting is what people want. And that's where we follow our customers. I can be honest with you, sometimes the tips as to what should go overseas happens because a Jamaican or a Trini comes and buys things and carry back with them. And you say, oh, there clearly is a demand for this. And so you say, oh, possibly I should invest in exporting this in a more formal way. So we have followed, I think, to a large degree, our diaspora in terms of customer needs. You have to understand you're responding to a need. We have, in many instances, in the initial stages, used some of our own people to send overseas. But as the business has grown and as we embrace diversity, we have changed that. So, you'll find staff from every single nationality, race, creed, belief, call everything in our business, because we understand that embracing the diversity will also help us to appeal to many segments. But I think really, and one of the things, as Grace Kennedy, we're always willing to sit and talk to people because we believe we partner with what may appear to be our competitors, because we believe that if we all as Caribbean people get it right, then we're all better off.
I think that's really true. I mean, as the ICAC grouping will tell you, we're all Caribbean people, we're all competitors sometimes during the day, but we come together to see how we face the world. I have a question for you. The whole thing about digital currency. Jamaica's launched something, Barbados has, Bahamas has. I know you're in the financial area. Any comments about that? Happy, pleased, unhappy? For us as accountants, you're the practical person.
I mean, it's clear to me for the Bahamas. I mean, we do business in the Bahamas as well. And it's clear to me with the Bahamas and their family islands and the cost of cash and the cost of moving cash across several islands. It's really expensive. Not just from, for security, for just the cost of movement. And so to me, that digital currency is helping to bridge that divide. So they'd have seen that some of their commercial banks would have closed the locations on some of these islands because it's not viable. So you really do need a convenient way to trade. And I think how they've gone about it, they've actually been recognized, I think, as the best digital currency rollout that's available. For us, we're going to be involved in what's happening in Jamaica because we also we don't see a great revenue model around it. So we're also talking to the central bank about that. But for sure, it brings security because, that's one of the issues we'd have here at home. And it also it removes some of the cost of just transacting in cash. Cash can be expensive. Cash is expensive. I think we'll be a cash-based society for some time to come, but we really should be very deliberate around trying to reduce the dependence on cash.
As an accountant, I'm always asking business people and attorneys, I'm not going to admit what you are. And because you're a business person, it doesn't really matter. As we talked earlier, Andre is a zoologist, I started in chemistry. We start all various places is where we're going, right? So what advice do you have for us as accountants in the business during a pandemic? The Grace results are phenomenal. Any advice for us as practitioners that you would want to see us bring to the table? Because we have a unique opportunity to
You're going to get me in trouble now, Alison.
No.
Because I always say that all the IFRS changes just guarantees that accountants will always be important. The newest one, IFRS 17, is giving me headaches. But I just believe that there's a responsibility, just like when we talk about financial inclusion, there's a responsibility to help us to all better understand what is behind numbers. I think sometimes there's that gap, when it comes down to what is happening in the business area. I think as your own businesses is to add value in different ways, to offer training, to offer coaching, to offer different things. It's not just about being appointed and doing the audits. It's really about how you align yourself to offer new services to your consumers and to target some of these SMEs, so all the banks are targeting SMEs. Why don't you partner with a bank? So you're also a part of that discussion and likely generate new revenue streams and new opportunities as well.
Perfect. Some questions are fast coming in. A question says, I participate on a panel supporting funding for startups. How do great ideas become great businesses?
We get a lot of proposals. I mean, we have to be very careful because we also have to be careful it's not something we're pursuing. But you sometimes can, submit these proposals. You also have various government institutions that are there to support you as well. You also have, as I said, several banks have invested, and First Global is one of them, have invested in partnering with small businesses and helping them to, put together their plans. Yesterday, funny enough, I was driving in Kingston and saw a board offering services to creatives. A company has been formed just to offer services to creatives around how they can get themselves going. So I think there are opportunities. Okay. I was getting a message, Alison said it was a little confusing about my time left. So, all right.
We have 2 minutes. So we have another question for you. We're going to squeeze in as much as possible from you. You have managed to go global, but maintain your Jamaican identity. I mean, we heard the reggae and the Jamaican patois, even though Spanish was the ad. How do you stay true to your brand within the global markets? How much of a challenge has that been? How do you maintain your Jamaicanness as a company, as a global brand? That's our last question.
Because we also believe that our Jamaicanness is a huge part of our success. I don't want to offend all my Caribbean people, but Brand Jamaica is huge. I believe that who we are as a people, our confidence, our just belief in self, or what we have achieved in music and arts and sports and everything is what makes us special. So we firmly believe that being Jamaican is really important. We don't want to lose that. Being Jamaican, being Caribbean is really important because there's so many other brands out there fighting for space. And what makes us unique and what we should leverage is being Jamaican. So though we have embraced, as I said, our staffing now will, cut across all races, everything like that, we really believe that it's important, is an important strategy, is an important, the first quote I talked about from Marcus Garvey, being really conscious about your roots and what really you are about. I think it's really important. I don't think we could do anything else well. I think we're just a Jamaican company, really and truly satisfying the taste of the world.
I love that. And one beg from me, that Jamaican rice and peas that I buy in Toronto, I can't cook. I'm declaring it here. I would love to see it in the other markets in the Caribbean. So wherever we go, we can cook it locally.
Yeah. And that's something we're trying to do better, because this, when I went to Canada for the first time, I realized Grace Kennedy does sodas, for example. So one of the things we're now focused on is looking back at our product suite, because they're very different in some of our countries. The patties I showed you just now are not in Canada. Canada just launched jerk patties. And so it's really and truly understanding that as our people move around, go and come back and everywhere, how do we ensure that the products are available? We're also investing heavily in e-commerce, which should make that easier, because then you'll be able to go online and order these products.
So you see, you now have me admitting that I rely on Grace Food to eat.
But you'll find us on Instacart, you'll find us on Walmart online, and so we're just really trying to be where our customers are, because that's really our responsibility.
Excellent. Thank you so much for talking to us about Grace. I'm sure all of us have learned something new about how to take our brand globally. Thank you so much, Grace. Have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you so much, Alison. It's been my pleasure.
Thank you. So now that we've heard about that global brand, and you've heard that I can't cook and I rely on food to be processed for me, let us now talk about the eye on the region's emerging sector. We're now going to hear from Martin. Martin Pertab is a senior petroleum economist at the Ministry of Natural Resources in Guyana, a country I really want to go and visit. I've been invited a lot. It's beautiful, and I'm going to make it my duty to go. Martin is an amazing resource. He has a master's in economics. We're covering all the degrees here from New Mexico State University, and he's actually pursuing his PhD. So the next time he speaks to us, he will be doctor. And he's pursuing it in energy economics at the University of Aberdeen. And guess what his research is on? He's focused on Dutch disease and the structural transformation on oil-rich developing countries. Look at that, coming straight to us from Guyana. Martin, over to you. We want to hear what you have to tell us about the happenings in Guyana.
Hello, good afternoon to you all. Let me first start by extending heartfelt appreciation to the organizers of ICAC for the invitation to speak on the development of the oil and gas sector in Guyana. Since 2015, the year before struck oil in commercial quantities, Guyana has become, if not the most talked about newcomer of the oil and gas industry. Today, I'm joined by my colleague, Bobby Kosai, who is also the Senior Petroleum Coordinator here at the Ministry, and is also part of the Ministry Management Program. I know the time is quite limited, so we will endeavor to get our message through within the allocated time. Thereafter, of course, we'll be delighted to take your questions. The first slide here shows the delineation of our resources, the oil and gas. To date, of the total area that has been allocated or available for allocation, so to speak, only less than half has been allocated, and of course that's in the gray. The yellow are the ones that has been allocated. The Stabroek Block, which is the most prolific of all, is the most active, operated by three main shareholders, which includes ExxonMobil, Hescaya, and CNOOC. Exxon has the largest share of 45%, followed by Hess 30%, and of course by CNOOC 25%. The Forced Petroleum Agreement of the Stabroek Block was inked in 1999 and later renegotiated in 2016. Since Forced Oil in 2019, the pace of development of the Stabroek Block area has been moving quite rapidly. Guyana has made 4 new discoveries, 3 in 2020 and 2 in 2021. Just recently, I think 1 month ago, we made that last discovery, taking the total discovery to 20, and reserve, that is oil and gas reserve, to well over 9 billion barrel of oil. This is, of course, the largest oil discovery in the past decade. Today, the rate of success has been quite successful. We are at a rate of 80%, 80% success. Overall, the economics of Stabroek Block has been quite favorable also, with 3 of the developed well, which is Liza Phase 1, Liza Phase 2, and the Payara, having a break-even at around $35, $25, and $32 per barrel, respectively, which is, of course, quite favorable. As it relates to the latter 2, which is Payara 2 and Liza Phase 2, the Liza Phase 2, those developments are on track. We have the Liza Phase 2 project, which will commence production by the end of 2021, and Payara is online for production by 2024. So basically, this graph basically shows us here's the time trend from 2020 to 2027. Some of our projected capacity production rate. By 2025, we were expected to have at least 4 wells operating, producing way above 500,000 barrels of oil per day. By 2027, we are expected to see at least six of those FPSOs producing out there on our shores. That of course going to take us way above that 1 million barrels of oil per day. Currently, only one of those wells and FPSOs are operating, and that's of course the phase 1. Our daily production rate is around roughly 120 to 130 barrels of oil per day. So an important point to stress here is that there's a tremendous prospect of future discoveries in the area. In fact, just recently, the new discoveries was located beneath an existing oil find. According to some of the latest estimates, the total basin potential could be more than 2 times than what is actually available. As it relates to exploration and appraisal, we are expected to see an additional 10 exploration wells and appraisal by the end of 2021. That is on our, of course, that's for this year. By the end of this year, we expect to see those things. So this slide basically just show some of the physical indicators of the field. Resources is roughly 9 billion barrels of oil. The 80% success rate that I've mentioned recently. By 2026, we are expected to target 750,000 barrels of oil per day. And of course, the cash flow of that Starboard block is expected to be pegged around $2.5 billion of operating cash. It's highly resilient, a 10% rate at $35 a barrel, and along with a 20% rate of return, which of course is a high return. Currently, the amount of jobs that the sector has been supporting is way over the 2,000 limit. So in this slide here, with the advent of Yellowtail by 2025, which is shown on the right-hand side of the graph, by 2026, we would be approaching the 1 million barrel of oil equivalent. Even more interestingly, because of the exceptional reservoir quality, we expect to see a reduction in gross development cost of Liza Phase 1 from 4.4 billion to 3.5, which is of course quite interesting given the fact that the geological formation of the Starboard block is way, let's put in other words, cheaper to operate in compared to other geological formation of other countries. So here I will stop and ask my colleague to complete the presentation. As I said before, he's the senior petroleum coordinator here. We both work together. I'm just a brief introduction. He's also doing his PhD at Aberdeen, so we came a long way. So Bobby, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Martin. I know we have limited time, but we wanted to bring all of the information to you and to your audience on what is happening in Guyana. As you can see from this particular slide, what is demonstrated here is that over the next 10 years, working in the offshore development fields of Guyana is an investor's paradise, simply because break-even price for all of the fields moving forward are pretty low as compared to what it was previously. Those of you who are paying attention to the oil market, you know that oil price is over that $70 mark, which is very good for oil producing and oil exporting country. We, as Guyanese, we can be proud of that at this point in time. 5 or 6 years ago, we were not, because we were importing all of our fuel and we were not an oil producing economy. But moving forward, we can see that the rate of return, the internal rate of return, the NPV moving forward for these projects allow for both the government and the investors to make a good profit. Guyana, of course, is now an oil producing and exporting economy. As such, we are susceptible to changes that are happening on the international market. One of it is the oil price volatility. If we can all recall that last year, in the month of April, oil price was set at negative close to 40, which means that there were more supply on the market than there were demand. And we all know that is as a result of the great pandemic and the lockdown that we were in. But moving forward, we can see that the demand for petroleum and petroleum-related products are increasing. And as such, Guyana's positioned in a very lucrative market to allow for greater exploration. To date, we have 20 commercial discoveries, which will allow for the development of different fields over time. Hence, you will hear when the operators and the investors speak, they will talk about 10 FPSO, they will talk about moving towards 1 billion barrels of oil being produced in Guyana by 2030 or even before. That is simply because of the rapid rate of increase in the development activities and production activities taking us forward as a country. The one thing to caution here, while Guyana is advancing on the petroleum side, we want to maximize the economic benefits that are happening in the country. As such, certain policies, regulations, legislation, and programs are being put in place to allow this emerging economy to not face the effects of the Dutch disease or those of the resource curse syndrome. Lastly, we wanted to highlight to you the other aspect of the oil and gas coin, that is talking about the gas to energy project. Some of you may have heard that Guyana is advancing on the development of a pipeline from the offshore field, which will land in Guyana and then go across country towards the development of a gas power plant. This, of course, is very critical to this economy. Guyana has always been hampered by the cost of electricity. That cost is not only financial cost, but in terms of the stable supply of electricity in this country. We have not been able to advance to heavy manufacturing. As such, we have not been able to have a good industrialized state. This project, which will take us to 2024 and come on stream sometime before the middle of 2024, will allow Guyana to become an industrial state and also advance the development of the manufacturing industry in this country. Many of the value-added products that we have to import today, by 2026-27, we should see them being produced in country, which of course will add more value to the economy. And as such, that is one simple example of ensuring that we can produce and become self-sustained and not take on the effects of the Dutch disease, nor the resource curse syndrome. So these are the key information we wanted to present to you, and we thank you for giving us the opportunity to highlight the development of the hydrocarbons industry in Guyana. Thank you.
Thank you. I haven't seen any questions, but I wanted one clarification. As somebody that, I pretend I know nothing when I hear these amazing presentations. What is the Dutch disease? Can you tell us a little more, just for some of us that don't know what that is?
So, okay, the Dutch disease is essentially when laborers in the manufacturing, we call it the non-resource tradable sector, moves out of manufacturing towards services and agriculture. In the pattern of structural transformation, manufacturing is presumably the most important one, given the fact that most developed countries that are developed today went through that stage of development whereby laborers move from agriculture then to manufacturing, and because of productivity, then of course as economic growth takes place, then they move into services. The Dutch disease essentially disrupt that pattern. So there are two reasons as to why that might happen. One, for example, let's say for example the case of an oil-rich country, an increase of revenue flow might of course increase government spending. Government spending might lead to higher spending in the services sector, construction and so on. So because of that, you're going to inflate the value of that sector. So essentially what happens, you're going to have laborers now moving out of manufacturing towards services. Manufacturing cannot compete, prices goes up, the sector crunches, and that's the Dutch disease. Another angle of the Dutch disease also could be seen in the exchange rate. As money comes in, that is why Dutch disease is not only limited to oil and gas. It could be a tourism country, a country that depends on tourism, any country that depends that has a high level of foreign exchange. So let's say, for example, the revenue comes in because of the fact that the domestic currency would depend on the demand of that currency. More foreign exchange chasing the domestic currency going to inflate that price. So because manufacturing is tradable, and of course, most of those goods of value added would be sold on the foreign market, now you would find that cost locally would go up. So of course, higher costs on the local market, on the international market, going to reduce competitiveness. And again, you have a crunch in that non-resource tradable sector. And in countries that depend heavily on manufacturing, when that crunches take place, when that contraction takes place, now you're going to find the country is in a position because one of the major sector has been constricted, has been reduced. Then you're going to find the impact on economic growth, and that is essentially the Dutch disease.
Wow, thank you for that, because I always thought it was oil and gas. You've woken me up to the fact that it could be a lot of other industries. That's why I tell you, these sessions are amazing. I mean, thank you so much for giving us some information. And it sounds like Guyana is a place to be because you're not going to have Dutch disease since you're doing your PhD. Look at that. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. So the next speaker in line, who would be presenting, of course, on the very same topic and would focus on Suriname would be Madevi. So Madevi will now present and her presentation will be focusing on Suriname. Thank you very much.
That's right.
Thank you.
You're so welcome. We're going to move over to her, your neighbor in Suriname. Thank you for being with us. And we're coming to Guyana, all of us from ICAC.
We welcome you.
Thank you so much. So, as you indicated, Madavi Pandey will be up next to speak to us about Suriname. She's a dedicated and highly motivational professional with more than 18 years of experience providing quality service and building accounting and auditing technical expertise in the public, private, and federal sectors. She has a deep understanding of the financial statement process and internal control environment. She has been working with this is where I almost stutter, Stat Soli, I want to make sure I pronounce it properly, since April 2018 in different managerial roles responsible for the first time IFRS adaptation. She's an alumni of Ernst & Young USA, and she decided to leave the public accounting industry as an experienced senior manager to focus on the oil and gas industry in her home country. So she's a returnee to her country. She's an active and licensed CPA and a member of the AICPA, and she's back home in Suriname. Over to you.
Thank you, Alison, for the nice introduction, and Martin for explaining the oil and gas industry from a Guyana perspective. That's very interesting also for myself. In today's Suriname's presentation, we'll have it more about stats only, and you did pronounce it correctly, Alison, so no problem about that. And then more so from an NOC perspective, a national oil company. We'll go a little bit into the history from Staatsolie's perspective, and then we'll go into the current developments with the recent oil discoveries in the offshore department from Suriname's perspective. So Staatsolie was founded in 1980. One of the things that is a little bit characteristical for a NOC is that you might have a dual role, a commercial role, so the integrated energy company, but also a institutional role, whereby, and we have ring-fenced it very recently in 2020, in February of 2020, which is called SHI, the Staatsolie Hydrocarbon Institute, which is a subsidiary of Staatsolie. But what is the important role of SHI? It's an agent acting on behalf of the government on any hydrocarbon potential. And that's very important to realize, the ring fencing that we've done very recently. So that's one of the recent developments. At the FID, so the final investment decision, which is supposed to happen somewhere next year, I think first half of next year, we'll place a supervisory board comprising of the CEO of Staatsolie, the Ministry of Finance, the Ministry of Natural Resources, and two other selected members who would be sitting in that board of HSI. And then Staatsolie, the dual role that Staatsolie has, it has the concession agreements on the left side with the government of Suriname. And then on the other side, we do need to have our PSAs with the IOCs at this moment. And then so that's what SHI is helping us get all organized. Too quickly. When we look at the company profile from Staatsolie, our value chain, we do a lot. It's not only upstream and downstream that you see in the two horizontal columns here, but we also do some retail, we have some thermal power plants, we have a hydro dam, and we do some gold business. So it's one of the things that's nice about the different things that Staatsolie got into in the past 5 years, I think, especially if you think, hydro is 2 years ago, and if you think about gold, it's probably about 5-6 years ago, and we had some JVs going on with Newmont and RGM. RGM is more recent. Now that's just to evaluate and naturalize, have an inherent hedging. It's a little bit of an accounting term. But if you think of pricing from gold and oil and gas, specifically oil, if you want to have a natural / inherent hedge, you go into oil from one perspective and the other side gold. So that was a kind of a thinking process from an accounting perspective. If we think of stats only as what is our strategy and where are we going in the next 5 years? We have goals, we have a purpose statement, but the one thing that I mission, vision, but the values are very important. And then the one thing I want to really, and that's number one, is our safety, the HASEC focus. And then the third one, people focus. I mean, those two things are embedded throughout the entity. And that also reaches out throughout the society. And we'll get there through a few slides later on. Well, what are the underpinning purposes of Staatsolie? And here's where we get to the current developments in the offshore, deep offshore waters. If you look at number 3, 4, and 6, we want to establish at least 3 JV partnerships by 2030. We want to participate in the deep offshore field developments and productions, and then that's a big one, a big goal, but we need to work towards it because Staatsolie wants to have a seat as the NOC from Suriname onto the table with the big IOCs. So not giving up our assets, but taking part into how to manage the assets that Suriname has discovered. And number 6, in order to get to on that table and having a seat with the IOCs, we need to strengthen our organization and follow the world-class standards. And that's one of the things we've done in starting in 2018 was converting our financial statements from a more so a local type a local type GAAP that was not recognized everywhere to the IFRS standards. So we started, and then we'll get to that in a few slides later down the road as well. A few core parameters to mention. As you see, we have gold and oil. Reserves are stated. We have 2 oil mines, one with Marion, that's with Newmont, and the Saramacca oil mine, gold mine, that's with RGM. Our reserves are good. One is a 25% investment, joint venture investment, and the other one is a 30% investment. The oil reserves that you see up there at the top, those are our onshore oil production. Offshore, yes, very important, and that's what we're getting now to the new developments. We are focusing on capacity building, deep water exploration, appraisal, and also shallow offshore licensing. So we're not into the producing oil yet. We are currently still in the appraisal and exploration phases. In Block 58 of the basin, we have 4 major oil finds, 3 which one happened in 2020, and the 4th happened in January of 21, all found by Total and Apache. The operator was Total. Currently, Total is drilling their appraisal drills. Hopefully, by mid-August, we should have the results of the appraisal drilling. And also, not to forget gas, we had a significant gas find by Petronas and ExxonMobil in Block 52. Shallow offshore, we're not forgetting that. We also are going to the licensing rounds, which has started in 2020. And since this is a new development, a new area for Staatsolie, we are focusing on having the right people on the right spot, so forming the right teams, and also extensive training programs, which we are doing local, and also webcasts online. And we're also doing some, well, with COVID, it's a little bit difficult, but before COVID started, we did some secondments in different countries outside of Suriname. We had talked about SHI a little bit earlier, SHI. The focus that we have is there formalizing our ring-fenced organization. It is an institutional role, and we need to manage that. We need to manage the appraisals and the developments and the evaluation processes separately from the commercial role that Staatsolie has. So it is very important to keep that separate. Our Hydrocarbon Institute is currently evaluating the internal processes and establishing standards, processes, and also their capabilities. SHI was founded on 18th of February 2020. It's a ring-fenced PS where the petroleum contracts are all being dealt with. It's new, it's challenging. We are working on many different facets such as compliance of accounting and the drilling operation and also oil spill processes. And then going on to the next slide, and for some reason I am out of my presentation mode. If we think of, okay, all these things that are happening in an NOC as such as that solely, what's the impact on our current business? The impact is huge. We need to design and implement finance target operation models. We need to design and implement a controlled environment. So when you think of going to the international market, we need to have an ICFR. We need to strengthen our corporate governance. We need to work on an offshore commercial and funding task force where we work towards our participation rights. So you need to find funding, you need to find money in order to participate. We are working on our ESG, developing that because that's needed for funding currently and also needed for our social efforts and our governance within the firm. And then we need to strengthen our international investor relations program. That's very important. We've heard from different speakers about our ESG, how important it is, and we've experienced that the last year almost as well. And then we have a policy in place for that. And then the last thing that I just want to focus a little bit on is our corporate social responsibility. I mean, with the COVID pandemic in the past year and a half, that's only when you think of the S out of the ESG has really done a tremendous job on contributing. We have a Sue for Sue where we are contributing. We started that initiative. We have assisted financially and also non-financial for households where we had no tap water. We assisted with that. And just overall, developing a new HSE management system and devoting the resources to help our people and the society is just one of the top things when we talk about our people and our country. In the end, the goal is to get these oil developments offshore and to help not only the government with funding, but in the end the nation, because we need to get out of you all have heard of the IMF restructure, and this development and getting into a better place financially will also assist with that process in the coming 5-10 years. And with that, I thank you for your attention, and I thank the organization for organizing this very great conference and for inviting Staatsolie. Back to you, Alison.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I've learned so much about Guyana and Suriname. I mean, it's amazing when we do these conferences. I told everybody we were going to get some exciting and passionate things and learn on a Friday. So I have a question for Martin, though, but you can always chime in. If the country produces its own oil, what other factors cause Guyana to be able to improve? What other factors would cause Guyana to be unable to improve and stabilize its electricity/energy sector? Isn't fuel one of the main costs to energy production? So, Martin, that was for you because it said Guyana. Any comments on that?
Hi, thank you for the question. Yes, indeed, fuel has played an important role in when it comes to the production of providing electricity. But Guyana is moving towards a low carbon development economy. And while we recognize the fact that, of course, we're producing oil and access to that will be much more cheaper, because of the 2015 Paris Agreement, in which Guyana is a signatory to that agreement, we see it fit for us to expand our energy matrix to include not only fossil but also to expand on our renewable. So we will have solar, hydro also, which will also play an important role, and then of course, the gas to energy would also add to that. So the fact that, of course, we have crude, but of course the gas, which is also much cheaper and much cleaner, and of course that is associated gas. It will be more feasible for us to go that route rather than focusing on heavy crude or fuel when it comes to the production of electricity.
Excellent. So, give us some food for thought in the region because we now have more energy, more oil producers. So thank you for that, Martin. Thank you so much. We now have come to the end of the sessions, and we are now going to be moving into the conference close. But before we do, I want to remind you as participants, please go and fill out and make sure you do the evaluation so we know what you liked, what you didn't like, what you want us to improve. We also have to thank our sponsors. Thank you, ACCA, Platinum sponsor. Thank you, EY and PwC for the gold sponsorship. Thank you, CIPHA for the silver. Thank you, Deloitte and CPA Canada for the bronze. And again, thank you for being such an amazing audience, for sticking around on a Friday afternoon where we promised you, and I hope we delivered, a passionate afternoon where we learned about the Dutch disease, we learned about blockchain, we learned about the Grace legacy, we learned how to re-engineer, and we learned about the amazing Guyana and Suriname. So I'm Alison Peart, wishing you an amazing weekend and good health, and see you next year. Over to you, David.
Thank you, Alison. Wonderful job, and always inspired by your level of energy. You brought that Jamaican energy to the afternoon session today. I'm sure you kept everyone awake. Esteemed speakers, members of the ICAP board, presidents of the member bodies, sponsors, fellow delegates, and media, good afternoon, and thanks for having made the last 2 days of information and knowledge sharing possible. For the last 38 years, the ICAC has used its flagship event to become a thought leader, a think tank, and most of all, a voice of the regional profession. We owe a debt of gratitude to our founding fathers and every president since our establishment in 1988, who have laid the foundation on which I have the distinct honor and privilege to stand this afternoon as I address you. The global profession has progressed significantly over the past 26 years since I became an ACCA student, and even more so if we cast our collective minds back to our various beginnings. However, after the last 2 days of deliberations and presentations, I suggest that what has gone before us now pales in comparison to what is ahead of us, not in terms of technical difficulty, but in relation to our ability to adapt, change, and take our rightful place as leaders in today's world during one of the most challenging and unprecedented times we have seen. As I listened to our high caliber of speakers over the last 2 days, there were 3 words that have resonated with me over the 2 days: future, value, and opportunity. And I wish to briefly share some thoughts around these as we close. Helen and Status yesterday morning spoke about Gen Z and the future of accountancy, and Stacey's panel earlier today focused on the educational element of the future accountant, while Tim and Sonia shared with us about the future fit CFO. For me, my takeaways were firstly that the future must be now for us, and Gen Z, as referred to, is ready now and willing to go, but they are mostly not ready to wait on those of us that may still be reluctant to become future ready and future fit in our outlook, our skill sets, and our value offerings. And we should spend some time taking consideration of this as we seek to change the positioning of our profession. In terms of value, several of our speakers referred to value and asked the question, what is the value that we now offer as many of our traditional activities and roles are being automated? We need to see value today in terms that are not necessarily denoted in dollars and cents or any monetary value, but more in terms of the environmental and social value and what it means from a governance perspective, as Mario shared with us earlier. In terms of opportunity, our businesses, economies, professions have all been given several opportunities to chart this new path, to create the new reality. But in many cases, we have not surged ahead in the manner that was demanded of us despite our numerous efforts. Through the wars and conflicts of the 70s, 80s, and 90s, into the terrorist attacks of 9/11 and the decade after, into the recession and economic meltdown of 2008, and now more recently the global pandemic, the universe clearly has conspired repeatedly to push towards the changes required of us in terms of accountability, social responsibility, the value chain, climate change, and most of all, sustainability. And so many other key areas of focus as we continue to evolve. Grace Burnett from Grace Kennedy just shared about accessing global markets and the opportunity for us as a region to export not only our products, but our services as we seek to create that scale for export. And I recall a recent theme of the ICAC being strength in numbers, and I believe that we can learn much from that simple statement. It is clear, therefore, after 2 days, that accountants can no longer be seen as being counters, but we already knew this. And now as a collective, we must take up the mantle to make our profession at all levels future ready. Many of us are political leaders, corporate leaders, educational leaders, civil society leaders, community leaders, giving of our time, which uniquely positions us to take our region and the world forward. In this regard, at the outset of my term and that of my new board, I wish to firmly reassure our member bodies that the ICAC is not here to compete with you. Our role is to support your efforts as you strive to make your individual PAOs viable and sustainable, your members future fit and future ready, and to enhance your ability to access and play on the global stage. To our affiliates, we recognize the wealth of global expertise and knowledge you possess and have access to, and intend to continue nurturing these relationships to our mutual benefit. To you, our delegates and individual members, your input and participation is critical through your institutes, not just in attending our annual events and conferences. The ICAC is committed to supporting you through our work with your institutes, and many of your regional members have served on ICAC committees and even currently represent the region on global bodies and committees such as IFAT, where we have representation by Andrew Brathwaite, Stacey Ann Golding, Lisa Padmore, and in the past we've had many persons from the region, Pamela Monroe Ellis, for example, from Jamaica, who have also represented the region very well. As we close this 2021 edition of our annual event, I encourage all of you to envision the future while managing our reality. I look forward to meeting and engaging with all of you and encouraging you to become the best you can be as we all prepare to become more future fit and more future ready for our roles. We need to continue our work of repositioning and enhancing our regional profession. This virtual event has required much work and dedication, as many of our in-person events do, and it was possibly more challenging as many of our actors are spread across the region and even globally. I must therefore take the time as we close to thank several persons and entities who have made this event possible. Starting with our value sponsors, I wish to highlight our platinum sponsor, ACCA, whose logo I think is timely based on our discussions, Think Ahead. Our gold sponsors, EY and PwC, thank you for coming on board once again. Our silver sponsor, SIPFA, based in the UK, we thank you for the work you've been doing with the ICAC, especially in public sector reform and governance. Our bronze sponsors, CPA Canada and Deloitte, we thank you as well for joining us. Our esteemed speakers over 2 days, as you see on screen, too many names to mention, but you made this event what it has been. You ensured that the content of our sessions was focused on our theme, and we thank you from the bottom of our hearts for agreeing to present and to be a part of our annual event. To you, our delegates, this event is never possible without you. And sorry, before I'm getting ahead of myself, firstly, to our moderators. Yesterday, we started with Gowan, our sitting treasurer on the board, and then Nancy, another board member, joined us to assist in moderating the afternoon session. And this morning, we had Lisa Padmore join us, and the closing session was chaired by Alison Peart. All except Lisa are current members of the board, and Lisa has been a past board member of the ICAC, current member of the board of IFAT, and we thank you all for your contributions to the events of the last 2 days. To you, our delegates, thank you for responding, though the time may have been somewhat short, and we thank you for being so active on our Hoover community and engaging with our sponsors and your fellow delegates. And to our executive Khalil, Andrea, and Gowan, we thank you so much for the guidance and the clear feedback that you gave as we created the plans for this conference. To our production partners, Hoover, Zoom, and Webbers.com Limited, we thank you for the time taken, and there were many long days and nights in preparing production and getting ready for this event. And I wish to express sincere gratitude to all of you. To our outgoing board and to the incoming board, I must say a special thank you to you as well. And I made an oversight yesterday, which I need to correct. In introducing the new board, I inadvertently omitted the alternate director for Guyana, Vice President of ICAG, Mr. Vishwamit Ramnarayan. So I wish to correct that omission as we move towards close this evening. Welcome, Vishwamit, and I look forward to working with you and the rest of the board as indicated yesterday. Our support team, I must single out these two ladies that are currently on screen for the immense support that they have provided over the past 3 months as we move into production of this virtual event, having realized once again in January that we were going to have to cancel the in-person event in Miami once again. Sophia Francis Wilson, the ICAC office manager, who spent a lot of time primarily on registrations and assisting delegates as they registered for the event. Thank you, Sophia, for all of your hard work. And Renata Mohammed, who joined us as event coordinator, marketing specialist, and speaker coordinator. She coordinated the rehearsals with the speakers. She was essentially chaperone and personal assistant to all of our speakers as we got them on board and got them ready for this year's event. To the delegates who have been patient, I go back because last year I know we had the disappointment of COVID and not being able to assemble in Miami, which I know many of you were looking forward to immensely. And then again this year we had to cancel still because of COVID. As we look forward to the future, I know normally at this point in time we would showcase our next host, but as shared earlier, the Institute of Chartered Accountants of the Eastern Caribbean are credited to host this event in person in 2022 once COVID and all the protocols and access to vaccinations and so on continues in the manner that it currently is. So over the next few months, we will be sharing details as we work with the ICAC to complete their plans for an in-person event, which is scheduled to be hosted in June 2022 on the lovely Spice Isle of Grenada. As we come to a close, I want to remind each of you that please feel free to visit the ICAC website. Also, our social media pages, we are on LinkedIn and Facebook. And I encourage all of you to visit there. There is a gallery of photos from past conferences that you can share. I know there was some at the beginning of the conference that were shared as you waited and as you networked, but please feel free to visit our website and our social media pages. I encourage you all to take time to complete the session feedback forms. We thank you so much for joining us, the member institutes of the ICAC, for the 38th Annual Conference of Caribbean Accountants, envisioning the future, managing our reality, the 2021 virtual edition. Thank you so much for attending. We look forward to your feedback, and we encourage you to continue networking on Hoover over the weekend, posting your comments, posting your feedback, networking with your peers and colleagues across the region as we look forward to 2022. Thank you all. Have a good evening. Have a great weekend. Thanks.